The flames crackled and flickered as I stared into them, the dark red glow from the fire casting long shadows that danced across the trees. It was just me now, sitting in the silence, trying to put the pieces back together after everything I'd seen. I hadn't told this story to anyone in years, but tonight, it felt like I needed to speak it aloud, even if only to remind myself it wasn't just some nightmare that wouldn't leave my mind. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the deep lines that the years had etched into my skin, and took a deep breath. It started a month after that boy went missing, I said, my voice low, barely above a whisper. 8 years old. His name was Bobby. Sweet kid. Loved to explore. Loved the woods. His mom told him not to go too deep, but you know how kids are. I paused, the memory of the news reports flashing in my mind. One afternoon he didn't come back. Search parties went out, but there was no sign of him. Not until his grandfather found something. Blood. Lots of it. The kind that doesn't leave much hope. I poked the fire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks spiraling into the air. Bobby's grandfather, Old Man Whitefeather, was a tough bastard. Full-blooded Navajo, knew the land better than anyone. He and my dad were close, used to hunt together. One day, Whitefeather comes to our door. He's got this look in his eye, like he's seen something he can't unsee. He tells my dad we need to come help him track down whatever took that boy. I could still feel the weight of that decision. My dad agreed without question. I didn't have a say, but I went. I was 18, old enough to help, I guess. Whitefeather hired 7 poachers too, all well armed, and we took 5 of the best hunting dogs anyone had ever seen. Dogs that would track anything. I threw another log into the fire and watched it catch. We set off into the deep woods, where no one usually went. The kind of place that just felt wrong, even in the daylight. It wasn't long before one of the dogs started picking up a scent. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just the sound of our footsteps and the dog's low growls. The fire crackled, sending shivers down my spine, just like that night. I could still smell the damp earth, feel the oppressive weight of the silence that surrounded us. We kept walking, hours maybe. The moon was coming up, blood red against the black sky. It was then that one of the poachers said he had to take a piss. He stepped off the path, barely gone a minute before he screamed. Not a yell, a scream, high-pitched and panicked. We all ran over, guns drawn, expecting to see a wild animal. But instead, there it was. Bobby. I swallowed hard, remembering that horrible sight. He was hanging from the trees, like some kind of offering. His body was twisted into a cross shape, his limbs bent in ways that aren't natural. His face was... God, it looked like something had tried to rip it off, but gave up halfway. Blood had dried in streaks down his skin, and his eyes were open, staring at nothing. The sight hit me so hard, I nearly dropped my gun. I paused, the fire crackling in the heavy silence. My hands trembled as I spoke, reliving that moment. The poachers, my dad, Whitefeather, none of us said a word. We just stood there staring up at the boy when the dogs, well-trained, loyal, they started going crazy. Barking, howling, teeth bared, but they weren't looking at the body. They were looking deeper into the woods, growling like they'd seen the devil himself. I glanced into the surrounding darkness, the firelight making the shadows flicker like the shapes that haunted my memory. That's when we saw it. At first, it looked like a dog, maybe a wolf, but wrong. It was standing on its hind legs behind a tree, its head poking out just enough for us to see its eyes, yellow, glowing. Its body was tall, too tall for any animal, but gaunt, hairless, and stretched like it was pulled too tight over its bones. The The fire hissed as a log shifted, making me jump. I let out a shaky breath. Whitefeather was the first to move. He raised his rifle and took a shot. We all did. 7 men, unloading everything we had at this thing. But it didn't flinch. Not a single twitch. It just stared at us, its head cocked like it was curious, like we were the ones out of place. I leaned forward, staring into the flames as the memories clawed their way back to the surface. When the thing finally moved, it was slow, deliberate. Its long, clawed fingers brushed against the tree as it stepped out into the open. Blood was dripping from its chest where we had shot it, but the wounds didn't seem to bother it. The moonlight hit its face, and that's when I saw it clearly. It had a human face, or at least something that used to be human. Its mouth stretched wide in this unnatural grin, lips pulled back over jagged, rotting teeth. I could still hear the dogs barking in my head, the frantic, desperate sound of their growls. Whitefeather yelled for us to release the dogs, hoping they could slow it down. They charged, all 5 of them. Brave, loyal. They didn't stand a chance. I clenched my fists, the fire flickering wildly in the wind. That thing, it tore through those dogs like they were nothing. One swipe, and they were gone. Blood sprayed everywhere, their bodies ripped apart like paper. The sound, God, the sound of it, the bones snapping, the howls turning to yelps, and then silence. It was too fast, too strong. We didn't know what we were up against. I wiped a hand across my mouth, my throat dry. That's when the fear set in. Real, primal fear. We ran, all of us. Whitefeather, my dad, the poachers. We ran as fast as we could back through the trees, trying to get to the cars. But the thing followed. It didn't run. It didn't need to. It just walked, slowly, like it knew we wouldn't make it out. I looked down at my hands, the memory of the blood still vivid in my mind. I don't remember much of the run. It was chaos, gunshots, screaming. I heard my dad shout my name, but I never saw him again after that. One by one, they disappeared. Taken, maybe. Or they just vanished into the woods. I don't know. All I remember is reaching the car, covered in blood, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I looked up from the fire, meeting the eyes of my invisible audience, though no one else was there. I was the only one who made it out, the only one who lived to tell the story. Whitefeather, my dad, the poachers, gone. And Bobby, that poor kid. They never found him, or any of the others. I don't know what happened to them, and I'm not sure I want to. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but the memory still clung to me like a shadow. After that night, I couldn't go back. Not to the woods, not to hunting, not to any of it. I've lived in fear ever since, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if that thing is still out there, waiting. I never wanted to believe in the stories, but I can't unsee what I saw. The fire burned lower now, casting dim light on the dark woods surrounding me. People talk about skinwalkers, about creatures that aren't supposed to exist, but they're real. I saw one. I barely survived it. And if you're smart, you'll never go looking for it. I let the silence hang in the air, the only sound, the crackling of the dying fire. The woods were quiet, but in my mind I could still hear the dogs howling, still see that thing standing there, grinning at us like it knew it was invincible. I closed my eyes, trying to push the memory back down, but the fear never really leaves. It stays with you, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. And that's when it'll come for you.